I hope you all enjoyed the lunch. We had sai. I have no idea what that fish's name is in English, but it tasted good. So now we have arrived to the time for news and impact for AutoCAD and BricsCAD. And I'm very excited about this. I talked to a couple of you during the morning and during the lunch break here, and you said that, are there any news in AutoCAD and in BricsCAD? Now we looked at production, we looked at Revit, we can really see you're pushing and you're really developing there. So is there something in AutoCAD and BricsCAD? And of course I can tell you, don't worry, there is a lot in both AutoCAD and BricsCAD. We are 150 people here today. My best bet is maybe 110, 120 of you are using Impact for AutoCAD. So of course, we have not forgot about you guys. So the presentation here today, the reason I wrote AutoCAD and BricsCAD is because they're the same, at least when you think and look at impact. So the tools function in exactly the same way. There are some very, very minor differences, but none in the things that I'm going to show you today. And the theme of the presentation is that Impact 16 is just around the corner. So this will mean, like Frederick did before me, that I will only be focusing on Impact 16. There's just so much that there's no time to cram in 15, 16 features as well. And I think we have 15, maybe 20% of the features here. So there's a lot more as well. And I spoke a little bit with Peter and about how much time do I actually have. And Peter said, do not go over 5 hours, Nikolaj. People will get tired. So let's see if we can keep it to maybe 2 or 3 hours. Or somewhere around that. But we have a lot of time. So I thought that before we actually go in, start to look at the software, I want to give you guys a little treat. And there is something coming out in December other than Impact 16, which is just as big news, if not bigger news. Maybe some of you are thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. Maybe some of you aren't. So, but I'll just tell you to just lean back and relax, because we're going to watch the new Star Wars movie now. And of course not, of course not. I'll jump back into Impact, so we can hopefully do this in roughly 40 minutes instead. So I've listed up a lot of things here, and what I wanted to do in the beginning to set the agenda was actually I want to list up the features that I'm going to talk about roughly. So I'm not going to read up everything that is here, because it will just be me reading up from a board. So now you're looking here. We've been talking about a lot of different features. There is one thing in particular we've been talking about for Impact 16, and especially for BricsCAD and AutoCAD, and that is the slab module. If you have good eyes, you can see this is not here on the agenda. Why is it not here on the agenda? Because I thought it was too little text to put on there. So we have a big slab 16 text at the bottom. And of course there are more features in slab 16, but I just couldn't fit it on the screen. So you'll get that as a surprise when we get there. Well, the first thing we're starting out with is this thing about total measurements. So what I did here was I took a regular wall drawing, a very simple wall drawing actually, just a screenshot from that, and that looks like it usually does in the Impact standard. What is the new thing here? You might not recognize at a first glance, but if we just put a box around and make it do a little bit of animation, you can see there are actually two new things. And those are just two dimension lines, two small dimension lines, but it can make a huge difference for the guys designing, because you need to know what is the size when you're drawing this element. And here in the example is of course a wall. It doesn't mean that this is exclusively for walls. It just means that that is the first example I put up. So slab, pre-stressed slabs as well, beams, pre-stressed beams, and columns as well. So it is in a lot of the element modules. And other than actually what you can see here, it includes the geometry from the corbel, and it also includes the geometry from the cast-in materials that we put in the top here. It can also include reinforcement, where you can add typical. You can add tolerances yourself. It's a little bit different how you actually have the reinforcement. Is it laying into the element? Is it pointing out always? But here you can set your own tolerances for that as well in the new total measurements. So that was the first thing. The next thing, which is actually on the animation here, you can see it seems like a small thing. What we do is we press edit casting material, or edit window, or edit linear casting material. And the thing to notice here is that I'm just pressing the edit button and clicking directly in the element. And you can see this element here, for those of you of course using it, is unmarked. It doesn't matter if it's unmarked or not. This means we do not have to regroup the block. We do not have to do anything other than just pressing edit. So this edit works on single components in one element, multiple components in one element. It works on all element types. And as I said, you don't even have to regroup the elements. It also works on the elevation view for walls, and on both unmarked and saved elements. And the last thing is that it also works on several elements at once. So this is a tool on top of the find tools and the other edit tools we added during the last couple of years that really can make a difference, especially this one. If you need to make a small change, you want it to be fast. And this is also one of the things that Desi pointed out with the shaping of the slabs that she had there. When you have to do changes, it just has to be easy. And, well, you can put it like that. It just has to work the way that you would think it would work. Do you need to edit a casting material? Then you press the edit casting material button, of course. So another thing, another exciting thing as well. This is partially part of the Slab 16 module, but I'm bringing it in before I'm talking about Slab 16. This is because it also works for HoloCore. And I did a couple of animations. Well, it seems pretty easy to see up here. So we have a line, and that line just dictates where do you want the cut to be. It could be whichever shape you like. The only limitation for the holocores here is for the holocores you do not do curved lines. Personally, I've never seen a curved holocore myself, but it might happen. For the slabs, it's a different story. Here you can have whatever curve you want. So here you have an S-curve going through these two slabs instead. The difference also between the slab and the holocore is that when you do it with the slabs, it will immediately ask you what end caps do you want to put on here. So in this case, we just pick one of the standard ones that are in the template, and it will apply it straight away. I will just let it play once or twice because it's fast. And the good thing about showing it out thing like this is also that this is literally the time it takes. It doesn't take longer than this. You click a button, you click the line, it splits it up. Which end cap do you want? You get the end cap straight away. So another thing here, also on the plan, like the other things we were looking at with splitting, is show and hide strands. So here we have some slabs, we have some holocores, and we have a double T. And this works for all pre-stressed elements. So that pre-stressed beams, pre-stressed slabs, holocores, and form slabs. And as you know, you can use the beam module, the holocore module, to make almost whichever shape you want, or can imagine even. So this is a thing that we are very happy to announce as well. So, like I spoke with one of you again just in lunch, that what we want to get through here, especially with these tools that we've had for years and years, is that we add a lot of small things, and together those small things become a huge thing that can really save you time in your everyday work. Or in this case, just make it easy to see where are the strands exactly to coordinate whatever it is you need, put a hole in, or what it is you need to do. So, reinforcement group is a thing. I'm from Denmark. It's a thing that's used very, very commonly in the Danish factories we have. I know a lot of the Swedish factories do it as well, but I don't know exactly how many of you use it. There is a lot, at least. This reinforcement group detail is, for those of you who don't know it, when you draw a reinforcement group, Impact will put in a picture for you showing the details of it, which dimensions do we have, what quality is it, what length is it, you can change the text and everything like that. The new thing is, let's see if I can hit it from here. is the 3D view here. So of course, for presentation purposes, I put up a simple one. It's much easier to see when you're sitting 20 meters away down to the back. But where it really starts to help is, of course, the more complicated these shapes are, the easier it will be to see in 3D. Where can we actually use this? Well, the quick answer is all element types with view 30. It gets a little bit technical in view 30. What does all element types with view 30 mean? It actually means these element types: walls, columns, and beams. And then in parentheses, slabs and hollow cores. I've never seen a reinforcement like this in a hollow core, and probably never will. But in slabs, you might have something in the edges that look a little bit similar to this. So for a lot of different element types. So new thing, Jacob, he's sitting, is he sitting? Oh, he's sitting right there. You had a question before to Desi about mesh and going from directly as a machine file to the mesh welding machines. This is not a new feature for the mesh itself, but a new way of adding the mesh to the elements. So the reinforcement template we have, usually we only had the area mesh as we had before. But now it's possible to select bar mesh as well. So this means that when you're doing the bar mesh, you can have it set directly in the reinforcement template. That means you have to do 0 clicks to get it in the drawing. So going from 1 or 2 or 3 clicks or deciding what you want or which mesh you want or which element you want it to, you can just put it in the template and all the elements with that template would have this mesh ready to be sent directly into a machine. So as I wrote up here, now it is even faster to get your reinforcement information to the automatic welding machines. A lot of the features in here are about making it faster, making it easier. Walls and slabs, actually. So this is also part of the new slab module. It will make more sense for the slabs later. Other than that, as a little bonus, for very heavily reinforced elements, the drawings, of course, the more you have in the drawing, the slower it tends to get. These have been split up into several categories. So it might be you are adding a new reinforcement to a window in a wall, or a new reinforcement to an end cap. That can be done also in a slab, so in a wall or a slab, for example. Or you just want to redraw the mesh, or whatever it is you want to redraw. You don't have to redraw reinforcement anymore. You just redraw the part that it is you need. So this is again a thing that can make the workflow much more straightforward and faster. You don't have to sit and wait for anything that you don't need to do. So again, the very nice features. I'm saying that every time we get to one, but of course I only brought features. We only did features we think are very nice. So vertically split several walls. I think I'm standing over here a little bit easier for me to see actually. I'm right-handed. The 3 walls here. For those of you who use Impact Design for AutoCAD and BricsCAD today, know that this is not possible. You split 1 wall at a time. Here I have 3 walls. It could be 10 walls. It could be 2 walls. However many you like, and you just select where to split it just as usual. The difference here is just you can select more walls. As many walls as you need. And it also works on elevation drawings as well. The segments on the elevations then. Now when I mention the elevation drawings, we're jumping to a new feature about elevations. This is actually not only about elevations, and why is it not that? I'll get to that in a second. So this is an elevation drawing. We're starting an elevation. We want to draw a wall with a shape. And this video is very fast as well, but again, the same thing is, it literally takes the amount of time that this video shows. So you have the shape, and you want to put in these, I have no idea what these are called in English, as a leader, or for example, wireless or something like that. You need it to be on the left and on the right side. You have full control of however many segments you have. So you can see I just mark it up here in the picture, and you get the end caps on straight away, press OK. So it's easy to select multiple segments. You don't have to go through the segments as you're used to. And it works on walls and form slabs. And of course, form slabs, that is not on the elevation, you do that. That is on the plan drawing, but it is same functionality as it is for walls here in this case. So, updates to MEP keys. We have quite a few. I grouped them together in one slide to not use too much space for it, but have several different things. So one of the biggest things is, it might seem as a simple thing, but a big thing if you need it, you can put it in the left and right side of the element, or as in Denmark we say, side 3 and side 4. And this is a completely new thing. You've never been able to do this before. And of course, on this drawing you can see here, we have two different MEP keys. One is placed in the left, one is placed in the right side. When you get to your MEP key, you're setting up your MEP key, and you're getting one that is complicated. Again, this is a very, very simple example, so it's easy to follow what's happening when you're sitting far away. When you select whatever item, dot connection, or recess, it selects it in the grid to the left as well. So you don't have to think about where you are, think about what it is you're adding. You can see what it is you're doing. Of course, you could always see what it is you're adding, but when you get to a complicated one, and you want to edit a specific dot connection, instead of having to press it in the grid, you just press it in the preview picture instead. We can create MEP keys. Now I don't have an animation for that, from dots and items already drawn. It means that when you draw something manually on the drawing, you can mark it up, and you can create a new MEP key from using that. You can also copy on the MEP key lineup. You can also copy MEP keys there and create new MEP keys from that. And that, among others, is what I call and more here on the slide. So there are actually 2 or 3 or 4 features more here. In general, for all of these features that I'm going through here, is that I simply don't have time to show everything. And as I said, maybe 15, maybe 20% we actually have time for. So if it's something you think is relevant, write it down, give us a call, write us an email. We'll help you get set up when you get to Impact 16, of course. Collision control for form slabs. I actually talked about this last year as well. But that does not make a difference in that it is coming out in Impact 16 still. The only difference is that Impact 16 will be released 6th of December. As the theme of the presentation was, Impact 16 is just around the corner. So basically what this does is, you have variables you can set. How far distance is it from a cast material to a hole to a hole, or a hole to an element outline. And these variables, you can change the tolerances. You can change yourself. As a standard, we put 30 millimeters. You could have 50, you could have 100, whatever it is you need. And the way that the software shows you is when you move it. So, of course, see this one here. Here, this casting material there is too close to this hole. At least according to the tolerances that we set. That is why both the hole and the casting material are red. These two, of course, is part of the one we have already, is because it's on the girder. So, shapes. This is also, just dive straight into the action. Desi threw me a ball earlier today about shapes and editing shapes. She had the great presentation of exactly how you do it, drawing everything up. I cheated a little bit. I drew the line before I showed the animation. But I was thinking most of you guys probably know how to draw a polyline in AutoCAD, so we don't need to show that. Trim and extend. You can trim, you can extend, or you can actually do both. And also, take a look at the shape here. This is not an unusual shape for form slabs. It's not a new shape. The new thing is that we can actually trim and extend the form slabs. We haven't been able to do that before. Now available for form slabs, as it says. So another thing in the family of form slabs and double walls is that casting materials and dynamic casting materials have an extra feature. So this image here, you're very, very used to seeing this. The same thing as Desi told before about the database and Revit. What is the changes? It looks like it always did. So we pointed out for you, this cut lattice girder is the new thing. What does cut lattice girder do? Well, it cuts the lattice girders. So you can use this both by casting materials or dynamic casting materials. Here is an example. Might be a little bit difficult to tell, But these two here in the corner, they would have gone straight through if we haven't had the plates here. So this is what it means. It's that it splits it up into segments, of course, automatically. You don't have to think about it. You just put it in. And as I mentioned, this works both on double walls and form slabs. Bonus for double walls. Extra bracings. This is something we've been discussing back and forth for all our modules for a long time. Do we need extra bracings? How many do we need? When do we need them? Why do we need them? Etc. In this case, we have extra bracings on large double walls. Again, you set some sort of tolerance, some sort of value. And when you exceed that value, you get an extra automatic bracing. The reason I also write bonus, one of the reasons is, you can see here Q1 release. This means that this actually won't be ready for 6th of December, but for the first release we do in 2020. So it's a couple of months away, still very, very close. And this one is one that is a little bit difficult to show, but one that also can make a huge, huge impact on the way that we actually look at the drawings. And this is for double walls. This is splitting up casting materials in the shell that they're put in. So is it in the front shell, or is it in the back shell, or what you call them? It might not be front and back. It might be second shell and first shell. So they will be numbered differently depending on which shell they're in. It might be the same casting material, but as before, we had maybe we'll call dimension 2, then it will be called dimension 3, or 4, or 5, or what number we get to there. This is visible both in the schedules you have on the drawings, but it's also visible, of course, directly on the drawing, on the dimension lines. And it does not look like much, and this is why I put in a couple of colors here. Just notice the important thing that none of these two colors are red. Unfortunately, the text is, with Frederick, what he talked about before. Red means it can be improved. Red doesn't mean that in this case. Visible in the table casting materials, of course, and also the dimension numbers on the drawing. So, now we're jumping back to the agenda. And why are we doing that? It's of course because we've come to a point where I want to spend a little bit of time. And this is the new Slab 16 module. Peter, how many years have we been talking about this? For a long time.
At least 5.
Yeah.
I promise you 5.
At least 5 years. Now, it is less than a month away. Finally. The new slab module in Impact 16. And there will be a little bit afterwards. What does it mean exactly? But you would know that yourself anyways after we've gone through these things. Especially for you guys using the slab module here. You can see a huge difference in what you're able to do today and just the small mock-up I've done here. What's it called? Organic shapes, I think you call it. So we have S curve, we have roundings, we have also roundings on the edges. These are the beginner's course we've used a lot for training people in. So instead of having these cut edges here, we have rounded edges. And of course this goes through the whole thing. So for the drawings you get radius, you get the measurements that you need for the rounding. So the drawings are just as ready to go as they were before. Even better actually, but we'll get to the drawings in a few minutes. The next thing we jump into is end caps. And I'm using the same slab or the same balcony here as I did before. And this window here for slabs is brand new. And you can see up here that for each segment, that means technically terms, for each segment of the polyline that you use to draw, or for each segment that changes the geometry of the slab, you can add an end cap. So before, we had a maximum of 1 per side. Now we have no maximum anymore. You can have as many as you want, or as many as you need, of course, which is the important thing. So in this case, this is just a test end cap. You can see how does it look in the plan in this case, of course. This one I'll be moving forwards with on the drawing as well, so you can also see how it looks on the drawing. But before we get to the drawing, there are some things that you do beforehand, before you even start to make the drawings, that you didn't do before. You can do them now, which is the same things you do when you draw walls. You use reinforcement templates. So this is a slab reinforcement template. It looks a lot like the wall reinforcement template, but that's the whole point. You want to be able to have multiple meshes. You want to be able to control which direction the meshes go in. You want to also be able to have bar mesh for machine files, or you want to have area meshes for the mesh that you just order from outside and you need to know how many kilos or how many tons are you using. All of that is possible now in the slab module automatically. That means no more drawing meshes manually on your slabs. Jumping to the second tab here is we also have included the edge reinforcement from the walls, and of course also the end cap reinforcement here. I have a picture about the end cap reinforcement later as well. And lastly but not least, of course, we want to select what mesh it is we use. And these are the same mesh definitions that we use on walls as well. So everything you already have about the meshes that you use in your factories is already in your database. So it's actually really, really easy to get this started and working with it. So, as I talked about, as I mentioned, reinforcement in end caps. So now the end caps for the slab is also a little bit changed. It also looks a little bit more like what the ones of you drawing walls are used to seeing. With the specific addition to the slab that you can actually add end cap reinforcement. And of course, for those of you who don't know end cap reinforcement, it means that from the beginning of the end cap to the end of the end cap, you will get automatic reinforcement with stirrups, with straight bars. And what we had in the template before was the automatic distancing of the stirrups to each other. What you can also use to reinforce the slabs, of course, is the reinforcement groups that I showed you before. You can also take the automatic reinforcement, save it as a reinforcement group, get a 3D view on your drawing. There's so many opportunities and so many different ways you can actually play around with this, use it, get it tailored exactly how you want to work it with, like you're used to in Impact with all the tools. Fixing details. For those of you who used fixing details today, they're gone in Impact 16. They've been replaced by what we call connections instead. And this video shows how to use the connections, doesn't show how to set them up. It's a process that takes 2 minutes to set up a connection. A connection is a piece of reinforcement, or pieces of reinforcement, a casted material, or a casted material, maybe even both, and then a recess. So in principle, the same as you had in fixing details, but now the difference is you select the whole floor, for example, because where you need this is usually at the edges of your elements, because that's where you need to do that fixing with other things. So this small animation here shows that you can just go through, and it's what we call face-based. So it selects the side face of the element, so it can automatically control how it needs to rotate and these things. You don't need to think about that anymore as well. Jumping to the job drawings. The same slab as before. Now we have dimension lines. All of that is very, very similar. For the bent piece here, you have a radius. You also have the dimensions. For the other one, you have another radius. You have your end caps. And in this case, again, simplifying the view a little bit. So we have one end cap for it. Another big difference is that, of course, for the ones of you who use slab, I don't have to tell you that another difference. But for the ones of you who don't, I can tell you that these two views are new as well. These are sections. So before we had a profile that we showed. With one section, you could not control the section. You just had it, just like you have with a hollow core. But for a slab or a balcony specifically, or something with a little bit more advanced geometry, you need to be able, and you want to be able to have more sections. So in this case, I have two sections, one horizontal, one longitudinal, and you can actually have as many as you want and have them wherever you want to have them as well. The mesh, in this case, I used the regular area mesh, and you can see it puts it in both of these sections as well, and you have the same symbol that you would be used to seeing from some of our other modules also. So all in all, this drawing compared to an old impact slab drawing is extremely different. And fundamentally, it gives you a lot of new possibilities for the shapes that you need. You don't need to put in manual work. Everything is set up. You have features for everything. Or almost everything. Everything is a dangerous word. As many sections as you need, of course. So, there are more features, but I can't spend 5 minutes on each feature, then we'll be here the whole day. As I said, Peter forbade me to take up 4 hours of your time, so we have to keep to the time. We can convert the slabs to pre-stressed slabs. This is also a new thing, and vice versa, back and forth. Are you finding out that this project has changed? You don't need to redraw anything, just convert it. Split the slabs, we already looked at this earlier. You can invert your casting of your slabs. Again, if you're doing something like a balcony, or if you're doing something with the lifters you have, or a surface you need that is better, of course you want to have the surface of the slab down in the mold. And that is exactly what invert casting of slabs means. That just means it's inverted compared to the way that it's put up on site. You can even override strand patterns for pre-stressed slabs. It might be you have an engineer. He's a very good film design user, so he found out you don't need this many slabs. It might also be a good pre-stress user. He says you don't need this many strands. But in your database, you have a strand pattern that is called 16. You have a strand pattern that is called 8. You put 16 strands in this slab. The engineer says, this is way too much. You only need 12. Then you can go directly in, and you can just pick the strands that you want without even having to make a new definition. And it will save on that slab, or those slabs if you mark more. So, another thing that I had to actually show also with an animation is we can directly modify the shapes of single unmarked elements just by dragging the ends. And now I'm saying just by dragging the ends, you can actually do more. We have to have the video start over again because it's the first thing that you actually do. So here we change the shape. If we click on this first, you can see here there is one segment at the top. We add another segment. We can add 10 more segments to get the shape that we want. And then just drag it. There's one thing to remember here, is that here there is actually a reason why the element is unmarked. This has to be done when the element is unmarked. If the element is marked, you would have to use another tool, of course, for that. I like the trim tool. So, another new cool thing that we also have to show is that here is a square. But we have a rectangle up here, we have a piece of circle up here, we have a couple of holes here, and a welding plate also in this same area. That means that all the items and the shapes and these things that we want, we drew in this area beforehand. So what we do and the way we accommodate this is that we ask you to select an internal point. And then it will analyze everything inside the element and also the borders. So what it does is it makes the recesses. And if you're paying really, really close attention when we're doing this, you can see that it'll select all items because, of course, it's a computer. It doesn't know what exactly it is you want. So you also get the option of adding more things or removing things. So you can see, of course, the welding plate here. This needs to be added in the slab, and the slab doesn't need to go around it or anything. And here we get the slab layout. So, exactly what does all these, as I said before, small changes mean? Well, more flexibility when you're drawing your slabs. You have better features for drawing balconies. You can draw these complicated slabs faster. Why can you draw them faster? Because you have better features and more flexibility, of course. And, of course, the database handles all this geometry. So everything is saved in the regular impact database. When you go to production and you need to plan these things, it will look like it does in here also. So, coming back to what I started with, and the theme of this is Impact 16 is just around the corner. I think I should say there are, but I'll forgive myself for that. 100 new features. This is literally 100 new features. This is not just a number I put up. I don't remember if it's 99 or 101, but we are there. 100 new features. This is not for Impact 16. This is for AutoCAD and BricsCAD. So only for AutoCAD BricsCAD, there are 100 new features for all of you users using it today. Set to release later this year. How do you want to get, you of course want to get started. Well, migrate to Impact 16 and coordinate with us. Some things are automatically there. Some things you can add some new settings to get using. And of course, we're here to help you as always in getting the most out of your software. Impact 15, I didn't mention any features from Impact 15. There are actually a few features there. If we go back to the last user conference, there have been added more things for Impact 16 as well. For example, linear casted materials and columns and beams and things like that. As I mentioned, we don't unfortunately really have time for that. You can read up on some of them, at least on our wiki, or you can coordinate with us if there's anything that you think might be of relevance, or if you even want to know if there's something of relevance to you. One thing to remember is that everything released in Impact 15 is also available in Impact 16. So Impact 16 just upgrades the database and does more. Or in a very few cases, like the connection we changed in this lab, we put in a new tool instead. Of course, we have to do that sometimes to keep it as fresh as possible. So there's a little bit about the wiki. This is just a screenshot from the wiki, and you're very welcome to visit that as well. You can find the web address in our website. You could probably also Google the Impact Wiki and you'll find it as well. And this is segmented up into different categories. So you can find what it is you need in there. So if you want to find something from Desi's team, Frederick's team, the AutoCAD team, whatever, you can go in and find it here. Of course, if something is not in here, does not mean it does not exist. So we are still always here to welcome you and to help you. So I think that was it.